Sharpen those axes and load that crossbow, Demon Hunters, because Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls aims to let loose a whole new breed of evil on the world of Sanctuary, and it's up to you, your blade, and a plethora of new abilities to send those demons back to the dark, festering pits from whence they came. Blizzard's newest expansion to its sales-breaking ARPG Diablo 3 brings with it many sweeping changes that have made Diablo 3 in many respects a completely different game. This is definitely to the title's credit, as Reaper of Souls is a breath of fresh air for the ARPG, which, despite having broken game sales records during its original 2012 release, did struggle with issues of replayability, loot distribution, and an endgame that fell into the trap of an endless gear grind with little reward. Thankfully, Blizzard has listened to its fans and learned some valuable lessons. It's created a Diablo 3 experience that balances the old with the innovative. So without further ado, let's take a look. For those who thrive on lore and story, you'll find Reaper of Souls' 5th act to be satisfying, if not a little rushed. Without dropping any major spoilers, the story picks up almost immediately after the events of Diablo 3, with Tyrael and the newly reinstated Herodrim locking the Black Soulstone away from the world of men, demons, and angels, in the hopes that the world of Sanctuary can actually experience a time of peace. Although peace does sound nice, it does make for a terrible story, and so before the door is even shut on the tomb, Malthael, the former Angel of Wisdom, storms in, steals the stone, and leaves a trail of devastation in his wake. Tyrael calls upon the hero that defeated Diablo to save Sanctuary once again, and this is where we find ourselves at the beginning of Reaper of Souls. The story does have a few nice lore pieces, as well as some nods to the earlier Diablo games, that will leave veterans of the series with a sly grin on their faces. Blizzard does have a track record of telling stories well, and this is definitely no exception. Reaper of Souls tells its story very well. In regards to what to expect from the story, it's a solid, albeit short tale. You will encounter a few interesting twists along the way, but for the most part, it's a straight shot from start to finish. The only critique I have of the story is that the pacing did feel a little rushed at times, almost as if they tried to cram too much of it into too small a time frame. Key characters such as Malthael weren't given enough time to develop, which really is a shame because conceptually they were great characters. Sadly, in most cases, they felt more like stand-ins or cannon fodder for the story progression. This is a minor critique as the overall story was still solid and did tie up a few loose ends left over from Diablo 3. Along with this new story, you will encounter some new boss fights that require some strategic shuffling around the battlefield. As a veteran player who has spent countless hours in the original game, boss combat had grown stale. Thanks to the new act, you will find some challenging fights to dive into. In particular, Urzael gave me quite a run for my money, and took me several attempts before I memorized his various moves and tactics, and was finally able to create a build that allowed me to bash his face in. One nice feature that has been added is the ability to spawn at your corpse a limited number of times, which did make boss fights a much more pleasant experience. If, of course, you consider having your body mashed into little bits over and over and foolishly respawning to experience it again and again pleasant. Luckily, for ARP gamers, it is. You can also expect to encounter a host of new enemy types to bash, thrash, and smash to your heart's content. Blizzard did a great job creating a sense of rushed frenzy in the creation of Westmarch, Act 5's primary city and one of the story's focal points. As you run through the city streets whirling your battle axe around in a frenzy, the NPC dialogue, journal entries, and dialogue overlay really do create a sense of immersion that was sometimes lacking in Diablo 3. Visually, the city, along with the other locations in Act 5, really do pay homage to Diablo's dark gothic roots. Even the color palette of the expansion is a nod to Diablo 2's sinister art style, which seems to address some of the critiques of Diablo 3's original art direction. A particularly nice change for the expansion was to see more variety of location within the act, which really helped with the sense of progression. Diablo 3 had some great locations, but within each act there was very little scenery change. And let's be honest, a man can only run over the same tile set for so long before he begins to slip into madness. But have no fear, because Act 5 does an excellent job of switching locations just when it's needed. All in all, the visuals feel right, a blending of the old and the innovative, as I had mentioned earlier. In terms of gameplay in the campaign, there are a few additions to look forward to in the form of new abilities and assorted runes for each class, as well as a new passive slot to help customize your tune that much further. Speaking of characters, perhaps it's a good time to mention one of the Reaper's best new features, the Crusader class. Available out of the gate, the Crusader adds a true tanking class to the game. Don't be too quick to lock this holy warrior into a meat shield position though, as the Crusader is a master of battlefield control and offers a host of melee abilities for some in-your-face head smashing in the form of shield bash and sweeping attack. You'll also find some incredible ranged abilities such as Blessed Shield and Heaven's Fury that allow you to devastate those tough, hard-to-reach demons. Throw in some incredible healing and damage absorption in the forms of Consecration and Law of Justice, and the Crusader is truly a diversified combatant. If you're looking for a plate-wearing jack of all trades, the Crusader will make you feel right at home. Wielding a giant flail and shield, the class is built to both take and deliver punishment. The class feels well thought out, designed, and executed, and makes for a wonderfully fun class to play. Blizzard really nailed it with their Crusader, which in my humble opinion makes up for some of the flaws found in a couple of the game's original classes. And yes, I'm looking at you, Witch Doctor. The Crusader's story arc is well woven into the existing lore of the game, and is a nice nod to Diablo 2's Paladin, without being a direct ripoff. In fact, you're in for some nice lore treats as you close in on Act 5's ending. But you wouldn't want me to spoil that for you, would you? Let's just say that from a lore perspective, Blizzard has handled the Crusader with great care, and has given the class a deep, rich, and satisfying backstory that fits well with the game, and, as with all story in the new campaign, is delivered well. One final change that has impacted both campaign and adventure mode is the difficulty system. The short version of the difficulty system change is that Blizzard listened to all the whining babies that said the game was too easy, and basically figured out what impossible would look like, and times that by 6. The game now comes in a variety of flavors, with the highest level of difficulty being Torment, levels 1 through 6. Because only having 5 levels of Torment just wasn't enough. For the die-hard players, and you will die hard, a lot, this new difficulty system will add a wonderful level of challenge and reward. For the rest of us, the game is easily adjustable on the fly for those times when that one boss is just a little too tough. And yes, I'm looking at you, Urzel. Moving away from the campaign, it is definitely worth spending some time talking about another new feature that Reaper of Souls offers, namely Adventure Mode. This is a great addition to the game that provides a lot of replay value to Diablo 3, something that has been lacking up to this point. After spending several hours over the last couple of days in Adventure Mode, I can make that last statement from a point of experience. If I had to sum Adventure Mode up into a simple statement, I'd have to say that it's crack for dungeon crawlers. Adventure Mode opens up the entire world of Diablo 3 and its expansion, allowing you to fulfill a set number of bounties or objectives for each act. Once you've completed all the bounties for the act, you'll be rewarded with loot, key tokens for Nephilim Rifts, and I'll talk more on that later, and blood shards, one of the game's new currencies used for purchasing rare or better quality level appropriate gear. The greatest part is that these bounties change with every playthrough, as do the locations you have to travel within the act. This creates a variety of locations, enemies, and loot for you to pick up along your way. For the loot hunters and dungeon crawlers, this is pretty much like your birthday, Christmas, and any other holiday you typically receive gifts wrapped up in a giant bow and served to you on a giant platter. There are some great ease of use features in Adventure Mode that add to the experience, including instant map travel from anywhere and drop-in, drop-out co-op. Rewards are given for each bounty completed, which allows for quick play sessions for the time-crunched gamer, or marathon sessions of loot-frenzied mayhem for those that have an entire weekend at their disposal. This makes Adventure Mode extremely appealing for gamers of all walks of life. Another aspect of Adventure Mode that I mentioned earlier are the Nephilim Rifts that can be accessed from any of the city hubs. This is assuming, of course, that you've earned some rift keys from completing bounties. These are another form of dungeon crawl that are randomly generated in every aspect. Level types, the amount of floors, enemies, and even bosses are picked and pulled from the whole of Diablo 3 world and mashed together into a rift. The only consistent theme you will see is that you have to kill an army's worth of minions to unlock the Rift's Guardian, which, once defeated, basically transforms into a loot pinata of legendary proportions. Speaking of loot, another great update designed to support the new expansion was Loot 2.0. One of the greatest gripes people had with Diablo 3 was the horrible drop rate of loot. For a game that was all about loot, Diablo 3 was all about wishing you had some. Thankfully, Loot 2.0 has fixed all of that, and now when you dive into both the campaign or adventure mode, each experience will feel rewarding. Where once we saw a wide variety of stats on each piece, we now see a refined system that shows just how much each piece will impact your damage, toughness, and healing. This makes for a much quicker comparison of gear, helps focus your build, and allows you to see where your gear is still struggling. It's an incredible and much needed upgrade from the horrible loot system that forced people to buy their gear off the now non-existent auction house. The auction house, by the way, which was the bane of most players' existence, also went the way of the Walkman, flip phone, and portable CD player just prior to the expansion's release, as a way of supporting the new systems that Reaper of Souls was introducing. And all the players rejoiced, because Diablo 3 is finally a game about loot, not money. Also introduced in the expansion is the new Mystic crafting system, along with blacksmithing and jewel crafting, which both have seen an overhaul, making them viable options for gear upgrading. The Mystic will also add enchanting to your gear, allowing you to pick a current stat and substitute it with another useful stat. It's a great addition to the crafting system as a whole and allows for further customization of your character. One final feature that has received an overhaul just prior to, but in anticipation for Reaper's launch, is the Paragon system. What was once a useless magic find buff increase designed to force you into hours of endless mob grinding with little to no reward has become one of the best endgame features to ever be released. When you reach the new max level of 70, you'll stop gaining levels and instead begin to gain Paragon points, which allows you to further hone the progression and development of your character. Paragon points are divided between core, offense, defense, and utility, and can be completely reset at any point during your playthrough. This allows for a greater level of customization for your character, and the best part is that your Paragon points are account-wide, meaning every character you create will have access to their own set of points from level 1, allowing you to really focus your character's development from the very beginning. It's an incredible reimagining of the system and adds a lot of life to Reaper of Souls. If you're a fan of Diablo 3, you will love Reaper of Souls. It adds a new act, some great story, and an incredible new class and features. If you weren't a big fan of Diablo 3, then consider this a do-over, because picking up Reaper of Souls feels like a whole new game. It's an excellent new game at that. I highly recommend Reaper of Souls if you're a fan of the ARP genre, because Reaper of Souls delivers, and you can pick it up right here at GamingDragons.com. I'm Matt, and thanks for watching.
Wow.